Presenting you JustProfessor. You're terrified of plane crashes, but you're not scared of driving to the grocery store. You worry about stranger danger, but not about your own relatives. You think crime is skyrocketing when it's actually going down. Your brain is broken, and it's making you afraid of things that barely happen while ignoring actual dangers. Here's a question. What kills more people every year? Sharks or cows? If you guessed sharks, you're wrong. Cows kill way more people. But nobody's afraid of cows. Everyone's terrified of sharks. Why? Because shark attacks make the news. Dramatic shark attack stories stick in your memory. But cow-related deaths are boring and forgettable, so your brain decides sharks are the bigger threat, even though the data says the opposite. This is the availability heuristic at work, and it's completely messing up how you see the world and make decisions. The availability heuristic is a mental shortcut your brain uses to judge how likely or common something is. Instead of looking at actual statistics and real data, your brain just asks itself, how easily can I remember examples of this happening? If examples come to mind quickly and easily, your brain assumes it must happen a lot. If you can't easily think of examples, your brain assumes it's rare. This sounds like it might work okay, but it's actually terrible. Because what comes to mind easily has nothing to do with what's actually common. What comes to mind easily depends on what's dramatic, recent, emotional, or personally relevant to you. Your brain is judging probability based on memory, and your memory is a terrible random collection of whatever happened to stick, not an accurate database of reality. This makes you scared of the wrong things. It makes you waste money protecting yourself from unlikely dangers while ignoring real risks. It makes you make bad decisions because you're basing choices on what feels common rather than what actually is common. And it makes you see the world in a distorted way where dramatic rare events seem like huge threats and boring common dangers fly under your radar. Let me give you some examples that'll make this super clear. Think about terrorism versus heart disease. Terrorism is scary and dramatic. When it happens, it's all over the news for weeks. You see images, hear stories, remember specific attacks. So terrorism feels like a huge threat. Meanwhile, heart disease kills hundreds of thousands of people every year in just the United States alone. But it's boring. Nobody covers individual heart disease deaths on the news. So your brain thinks terrorism is a bigger danger than heart disease, even though you're vastly more likely to die from heart problems than from a terrorist attack. Same thing with plane crashes versus car accidents. When a plane crashes, it's international news. It's dramatic and scary, and you hear about it over and over. So plane crashes are very available in your memory. Car accidents happen constantly, but each individual accident isn't newsworthy unless it's especially tragic. So even though you're way more likely to die in a car crash than a plane crash, planes feel more dangerous because plane crashes are more memorable. People are more afraid of rare diseases that have scary names and dramatic symptoms than they are of common diseases that kill way more people but sound boring. They're more afraid of being murdered by a stranger than being killed in a mundane accident at home, even though accidents are far more common. They're more afraid of things that make the news than things that actually pose the biggest risks to their health and safety. This distorts how people see crime. If you watch a lot of news, especially local news, you're constantly seeing stories about robberies, assaults, murders. These stories are available in your memory, so you think crime is everywhere and getting worse. But in many places, crime has actually been declining for years. The news doesn't report on all the days where crimes didn't happen. They only report the crimes that did happen, which makes crime seem way more common than it is. The same thing happens with everything in the news. Plane crashes, shark attacks, kidnappings, terrorist attacks, mass shootings. These are all terrible things, but they're also relatively rare. They just get covered so heavily that they become very available in your memory. Meanwhile, boring common causes of death like heart disease, diabetes complications, medical errors, and regular car accidents kill far more people but get way less coverage. Social media makes this worse. You see dramatic stories that people share and talk about. You see videos of crazy events. You see posts about scary things that happen to friends of friends. All of this makes dramatic events more available in your memory, while normal, safe, boring days aren't being posted about. Your feed is full of the exceptional and unusual, which makes your brain think the exceptional and unusual is common. Personal experience creates availability bias too. If you know someone who got struck by lightning, you'll think lightning strikes are more common than someone who doesn't know anyone who got struck. If your house got robbed, you'll think robbery is more common than someone whose house was never robbed. Your personal experiences are very available in your memory, so they have oversized influence on how you judge probabilities. This affects medical decisions. If you know someone who had a bad reaction to a vaccine, that one experience becomes very available in your memory and might make you think vaccine reactions are common, even though statistically they're rare. If you know someone who beat cancer with some alternative treatment, that story becomes available and might make you overestimate how effective that treatment is compared to actual medical data. Vivid stories beat boring statistics every time in your brain. Someone can tell you the actual numbers showing that something is rare, but then one dramatic story about that thing happening will override the statistics in your mind. The story is available. The story is memorable. The story feels real in a way that abstract numbers don't. So you end up making decisions based on stories instead of data. Marketing and advertising exploit this constantly. Companies tell you emotional stories about their product changing someone's life. They show you testimonials from satisfied customers. These stories become available in your memory and influence your purchasing decisions way more than boring facts about the product's actual performance statistics. You remember the story about the person who lost weight with this program. You don't remember the success rate statistics that show most people don't lose weight long term. Political opinions get shaped by availability bias too. People form views about immigration based on news stories about crimes committed by immigrants, even though immigrants statistically commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens. They form views about welfare based on stories about fraud, even though fraud is a tiny percentage of welfare cases. They form views about police based on viral videos, which might not represent the overall reality. The available examples shape opinion more than comprehensive data does. Job markets and career choices get influenced by this. People see successful entrepreneurs and think starting a business is a great bet, but they don't see all the failed businesses that never make the news. They see viral success stories on social media and think those paths are more common than they are. They choose careers based on the examples that are available in their memory, rather than looking at actual career outcomes data. So, how do you fight the availability heuristic? How do you make decisions based on reality instead of whatever happens to be memorable? First, actively seek out base rates and statistics. When you're evaluating a risk or making a decision, don't rely on what comes to mind easily. Look up actual numbers. How common is this thing really? What does the data say? Numbers are boring and don't stick in memory like stories do, but they're way more accurate for judging probability. Second, remember that news is not reality. News shows you the exceptional and dramatic by design. That's what makes something newsworthy. If you see something on the news constantly, that doesn't mean it's happening constantly everywhere. It might mean one rare thing is being covered heavily. Ask yourself whether you're seeing many different examples of something or just seeing the same example repeated over and over. Third, balance emotional stories with broader context. Stories are powerful and you're not going to stop being moved by them. But when a story makes you scared of something or excited about something, step back and ask about the bigger picture. Is this story representative of the norm, or is it an unusual case? What do overall patterns look like? Fourth, be aware of your personal experience bias. Your own experiences and the experiences of people close to you are incredibly available in your memory, but they're a tiny sample size. One person's experience doesn't tell you much about overall probabilities. Your friend's bad experience with a particular brand doesn't mean that brand is terrible for everyone. Your success with a particular strategy doesn't mean it works for everyone. Fifth, Compare risks to each other properly. Instead of thinking about risks in isolation, compare them. If you're worried about terrorism, compare it to other causes of death. If you're worried about a rare disease, compare it to common diseases. This helps you see what the actual big risks are versus what feels scary because it's memorable. Sixth, notice what you're not seeing. The availability heuristic makes you focus on what's present and memorable. But what about everything that's absent from your awareness? All the plane flights that landed safely. All the days no crimes happened in your neighborhood. All the medical treatments that work without dramatic stories. The absence of drama doesn't make news, but it's actually the norm for most things. Seventh, diversify your information sources. If you only get information from sources that focus on dramatic stories, your availability bias will be worse. Seek out sources that provide context, data, and broader perspectives. Read reports that talk about overall trends instead of just individual cases. This helps calibrate your sense of what's actually common versus what just feels common because it's dramatic. The availability heuristic is making you see the world all wrong. It's making you overestimate rare dramatic events and underestimate common boring dangers. It's making you scared of things that barely ever happen while you ignore actual risks. It's making you base decisions on what's memorable instead of what's real. This bias is everywhere in your thinking. Every time you judge how likely something is, every time you assess a risk, every time you make a choice about safety or health or money, the availability heuristic is there trying to shortcut your decision with whatever pops into your head most easily. And what pops into your head most easily is not what's most common. It's what's most memorable, most dramatic, most recent, most personal. You can't completely turn off this bias. Your brain is always going to use memory as a shortcut for judging probability. That's how human brains work. But you can become aware of it. You can catch yourself doing it. You can question whether your gut feeling about how common something is matches reality. And you can deliberately seek out actual data to correct your distorted mental picture. The next time you find yourself thinking something is really common or really dangerous, pause and ask yourself why you think that. Is it because you saw statistics showing it's common? Or is it because you can easily remember dramatic examples? Are you judging based on data or based on whatever your memory happens to have stored? Stop being scared of sharks while ignoring cows. Stop worrying about plane crashes while texting and driving. Stop making decisions based on viral stories while ignoring boring statistics. Your brain wants to use availability as a shortcut, but that shortcut is leading you to wrong conclusions about what's actually risky and what's actually common in the world. Watch the next video to learn about another mental shortcut that's making you see reality all wrong.